Transformers Timelines #1. This comic is a prequel to the Beast Wars Transformers series, the first issue, or the first story, I guess, slash issue story, whatever. It's called Dawn of Futures Past, and this actually came with my Beast Wars Complete Series Collection DVD. I have the 15th anniversary version of it. I'm sure there are other versions out there that aren't like, nice shiny silver where you can't really see anything anyway. But of course, because it came with it and it said it was a prequel to Beast Wars Transformers, I was like, I have to read this and review it before I do my review of the entire series, because I actually plan on doing it episode by episode. And so I wanted to go through this, and it was cool. It's not, obviously it's not like a super big comic or anything like that, but it is really cool. You get to see the Transformers before they get sent back in time, and then it kind of skips further in time because the Timelines comic series is a multiple issue series. It's not just this special little one-off comic, which is what I thought it was initially. And then I did a little bit of digging, and it has about 11 different issues to it, and it's pretty cool. I like it. We get to see the characters. I don't really remember anyone's name except for, like, I think Rat Trap is one of the names, and I recognize the characters because they still have kind of their old school design and stuff like that. Or I shouldn't say old school, I guess, but their older design from the Beast Wars show. Like the guy who's the cheetah, he still looks like a cheetah. He has like spots and stuff, which makes no sense because they are transforming into vehicles in this. And it was still really cool, and I love getting to look through it. I think the art's actually pretty good in this. And you get to see Megatron, you get Optimus, you get the other characters from the Beast Wars Transformers series. And they do a couple of other really cool things in here as well, because they have one reference to the old movie. I'm pretty sure it's from the movie. And there's a scene in here where they have Optimus say, like, wishes a lot of speed and a whole lot of luck. And Laserbeak is actually in this, and because all these characters are like descendants of the original Transformers, they had Laserbeak say like, oh, now where have I heard that one before? And I was like, that's a cool little reference to the old 80s movie, and I was like, oh, that's pretty sweet that they put that little reference in there, because it's technically not the same Optimus or Laserbeak, but obviously if you've seen the movie and you remember, that part where it's like the beginning of the movie basically, where Laserbeak is spying on the Autobots, it's a nice little reference there. So I was like, that's actually kind of cool. And they have a cool little moment in here where they have Megatron actually ditch his armor, because he has like this giant suit of armor on in here, which you can kind of see, like, hopefully it's not too bright, but that's Megatron right there with like the giant laser cannon, and he looks pretty insane. And so this is him like in the actual shot. So he looks pretty insane, and then they have a scene later on where it's actually like a big suit of armor, and he's walking, and he kind of like pushes a button and stuff, and like its steam starts to shoot out, and then you see him, and he's like much skinnier and stuff. He's like a slender version of himself, and this is it right here. So I thought that was a cool concept where he does transform. They show him transform early on, and I'm pretty sure it's the tank, and I was like, that's actually kind of a cool concept, where in this version they aren't actually transforming. I mean, technically they are, because whether it's a suit or not, they're still transforming. So it may have just been a suit of armor to make him into the tank, compared to him being something else, which may or may not be a reference to the old version where, he just turned into a gun. So it may have been a slight reference to that to make it where, because his two things are like, he either turns into the old gun or he'll turn into a tank, and that's his thing. And sometimes they have it where he turns into like a flying ship. I think they did that for Michael Bay did that for the movies. But yeah, that's kind of his big thing. Is normally it's either the classic gun or he turns into a tank. Is typically the two things that I think of, at least for Megatron. So I thought that was kind of cool, and they don't show that anywhere else, so it doesn't seem like it's that way for everyone. But I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was an interesting little thing. But it's a nice, simple little comic. They go through, and it just leads into the series. They have the Golden Disc, which I don't remember at all from the series, so I'm sure I'll be reacquainted with that as I go through. But they steal this Golden Disc, and they steal a ship, and it has a warp drive, which is how they end up jumping back in time. And then we have Optimus and the Maximals with their ship, and they're transporting some very sensitive cargo. But because the Predacons have stolen like this really important thing, is like, well, despite your mission being very important, like your cargo, we have to have you chase after the Predacons because it's even more important than what you're having, which they even specify in here is like basically it's so important. It's like we need to take it to the most barren wasteland planet or moon that we can find and just drop this thing and take off. So, you know, all that stuff is in there, which I thought was really cool. And it's just gonna it leads right into the series where they all vanish, and then they have a little epilogue thing in here, and it's like, you know, Megatron, he basically vanished. He's lost, and so he's no longer the leader of the Predacons. And then they actually have Razorclaw in here, and he's like, you know, he's the new leader of the Predacons. And I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, that's a cool way to do it. And it's like, you know, he wasn't a good leader for us anyway, and he takes over. Not in his crab form, because he has multiple forms. Definitely not the crab form here. But I thought this was a nice little comic, and it has me really excited to get into the series. But because it's the Beast Wars prequel, as it says like straight on the front, I was like, I have to do a little video about this. You know, tiny comic, tiny little review. But I'm super excited to get into these first. I'm probably going to do the first two together just because it's, you know, Beast Wars Part 1 and Part 2. So I'll just count them, you know, all together. But I'm super excited to get into it, and I actually had fun with this. I love the art in this. I think the art is really good. Fairly old. I've had this for quite a while now, but it's not like art from, you know, the 90s or anything. You know, it's fairly current art, and it looks pretty good. So I think it's a nice little comic. Like I said, it is the first in an actual series, so it's not just the Beast Wars prequel, but it's kind of made as that, and then it jumps to the epilogue. I believe, because I've never read the rest of the series, I would assume the second volume picks up where the epilogue ends, and it's like, okay, so Razorclaw is now taking over for the Predacons, and he's the new leader, and then we get to see what happens there, because it says it's many cycles later, which I would assume is years. So yeah, that I thought was pretty cool. And plus, Razorclaw was telling a story, so I'm assuming for sure it was definitely like years later. He's telling the new Predacons, like, hey, this is what happened to Megatron and how he vanished with Optimus and that group of Maximals and stuff like that. And this is what we're gonna do from here on out. And so I would assume the rest of the comic goes from there. So definitely really cool. They have this thing also that I thought was interesting. Never heard of this. It's the Transformers Club. I thought that was very interesting. And you also get a toy for signing up. I'm not sure if that's still a thing or not, but I think that's actually kind of cool. It's just basically just a Transformers magazine. They really surprised me when I saw that. I was like, wow. Because I never really looked at this at all, so I didn't even realize that this comic was in here. I forgot it was in here. I'm sure I've seen it, but I don't remember taking out and looking at the back and seeing Transformers Collectors Club, but that's definitely pretty cool. They got they have 3 of the little covers on here, and one of them has Michael Bay, and you know, it's like it's taking over, you know, for the live action stuff. So that was pretty cool. It's a nice little mini comic that leads into, it's Transformers, so I'm sure it leads into a good, you know, comic series. But I thought it was pretty nice. I highly recommend picking it up if there's some way you can, especially if you like Transformers. I think it's a cool way to do it. And because it's the Predacons and Maximals, it's very different. It's not just the Autobots and Decepticons, so it's not going to be the characters, it's not going to be the same versions of the characters you know and love, and that's another cool thing about it. So, especially, you know, if you're like me, if you were a fan of Beast Wars growing up, because that was my G1 Transformers, I would highly recommend picking it up. And even if you're just a normal Transformers fan, I think it would be really cool to see, like, they're not exactly reimaginings, they're just new incarnations of the same characters, because some of them will have the same name, some of them will have different names, but it'll be these new incarnations of classic characters, and they're very different. You know, it's been, I think the time span between G1 Transformers and Beast Wars is centuries. Like, it's a whole different thing going on. Transformers in general are much shorter. They're more human-sized than they are classic Transformer size, which I remember that from the series where they actually find the classic G1 Transformers, and things get really crazy after that. But I think it was a nice little comic. Of course, if you happen to have ever read it, I would love to know what you think about it, so please comment below, let me know. If you've read through the whole series, definitely let me know if it's worth picking up, because I've never had a Transformers comic, but I've always kind of wanted to get like a big omnibus. I've always wanted to get Transformers and Ninja Turtles have always been the two where it's like, they're all there because they're so old at this point. You can get just giant collections, and Classic Transformers is definitely one of the ones I want to get. It's really only one of two. It's Transformers and Turtles, and those are seriously the only two old comics that I really want to buy a bunch for. But I would love to know if this version of the Transformers comic is also worth picking up. So definitely let me know that. But I would recommend picking it up based off of this first one at least. I think it's actually pretty cool. It's a nice, really short, simple one. And of course it's meant as the prequel to the show itself. But it's still entertaining to watch, and of course the epilogue does lead into the main story, I would assume, of the rest of the timeline series. So I'd still recommend picking it up if you can find it on the cheap, or I mean at this point you could probably find the entire series, because it was, at least what I saw, only showed 11 issues, so it may have been canceled unfortunately. But you can look into that if you want to, but I'd recommend it. But like I said, if you happen to have read it, whether it was just the prequel thing, I'd love to know what you thought about that. Or if you've been through the whole series and, you're a big Transformers comic fan, definitely let me know how it stacks up compared to classic Transformers with their G1 characters and stuff like that. And of course, thanks for watching.